Good morning. This is your identifying elements using the periodic table LT7 group challenge. The assignment is in the week 21 folder where you will find these slides that I'm presenting with, your criteria for full credit, and the PDF worksheet, um, which has your detailed instructions to follow. So you are playing the role of an analytical chemist for a company that provides reference materials for industrial analytical labs. Your company is getting audited and they want to make sure that the inventory is correct. So you have analyzed samples with all of your laboratory tools and and you have generated descriptions of each sample based on how it performed on these tests. Now, your job is to use these descriptions to correctly identify the identity of each element. So, description number one, it's an alkaline earth metal with two valence electrons and relatively low electronegativity. It has the same number of electron energy levels as iodine. So there are four more descriptions for you to read and decipher on the PDF worksheet. This project includes four goals. Two you can do with your group, and the last two you complete individually. So, goal one, make a problem statement that's addressed in the final presentation. Make it clear and focused. And then make a completed table that identifies the location on the periodic table of the five unknown elements. You can do those with your group. And goal number three, individually explain the process and the equipment that you used to determine the unknown elements. And also individually make sure your presentation includes images and data to support your explanation for your process. Thinking of these vocabulary terms that can help you explain, and these are things we covered in our last unit. Periodic table, properties, electrons, dot structures, atoms, energy levels, and elements. So on your problem statement, just write a quick, concise, make it one of your, maybe your first slide. What will lead you to the suggested solution? What's your specific challenge? What do you have to use to identify the elements? What do you have to know about the elements in order to identify them? Quick one or two sentences, make it clear and focused. Then conduct some research with your group to find out the ways that scientists identify unknown elements. Make sure to include various methods of identification based on properties of elements. What types of questions would they ask about those elements? What instruments would they use to test samples? And after they have the data, what approaches do they take to analyze it? Also, with your group, then after you have researched the ways that you, as a scientist, would have uh, analyzed those samples, look again carefully with your group at all of these descriptions on here and make a table that correctly identifies each element. Compare the descriptions of each element to the information and trends in the periodic table in your analysis and in your process. Understanding how the general properties of elements go from lower levels to higher levels, and where different types of elements tend to be located based on their character and their sizes. Now, once you've identified them correctly, individually describe the location on the periodic table for each element and explain the process that you used. Make a periodic table to show and help you explain it, and really show the reasoning behind your identification for each element to get full credit. Make and then communicate your conclusions. Do this individually. Make a multimedia presentation to describe the process you and your team used to identify each element, and explain how your approach is similar or different to how a scientist in a lab would determine the identity of an unknown element. Basically, compare your research to what you did, what were your limitations, and what um, limitations exist in a lab environment, and what approaches they take and how are those similar to your approaches. Make sure to include images of the periodic table and images of laboratory tools that scientists in an industrial lab would use, and compare that to your process. So, in summary, you're identifying the elements, use the periodic table, make sure you show how you're thinking about patterns. How are patterns in the properties? How are things related to each other in the spatial way on the periodic table? And make sure you analyze and interpret data correctly so that you can find the location of those atoms. Once you're finished, it's open-ended where you can create these. Um, but I would suggest maybe just using some empty notebook slides from your digital notebook. Take the time to read what it means to get full credit. Read this criteria before you begin, and then use this worksheet as a guideline with completing all of these steps. When you're finished, submit your slides to the Week 21 folder, and I look forward to seeing your completed projects for LT7.